Welcome to Silk City. This once was what the Industrial Revolution looked like in the United States. Now, this is what poverty looks like. In this town, more than 20% are poor, more than 17% unemployed. It means for many here, 9 a.m. isn't time to go to work.
Hernandez, Josephine Jones.
It's time to head to the food pantry for charity.
They are low-income folks. Some of them have been unemployed for almost 2 years, is what we're seeing. But on average, it's the underemployed.
They're people who can't make ends meet. People like Jenny.
I'm the only one working in the house, and it's not enough. You know, it's just not enough to get all the food we need.
And the numbers are only growing.
We saw in 2009 a 15% increase over 2008 numbers, and we're anticipating that that number will go up by another 10% at the end of 2010.
Not only here, but in the entire U.S., new statistics for 2009 show 43 million people, or 1 in 7, are living in poverty. This is the most people who are poor in more than 50 years. That's when they first began tracking these numbers. Here, you can see one reason why.
Opportunities are few and far between, especially in old urban industrial cities like Patterson.
As in so many cities in the United States, manufacturing used to power this one. These were silk factories that now are decrepit, boarded up, sitting in disrepair. There are signs everywhere here of the U.S. manufacturing jobs that have disappeared or gone overseas.
Factory work, all of the low-level jobs.
That leaves folks with low skills sort of out in the cold.
And leaving them lining up in droves for a little heat.
We now prepare about 1,200 meals a day. Now at noon we'll be serving about 400 people.
A free hot lunch.
Some of the working poor, some are the homeless.
Not surprisingly,
I was doing carpentry, maintenance.
There are 20% more mouths to feed here at Ava's Kitchen than a year ago. Why?
Really ain't no work now.
And some can't work, like Irwin, who has an incurable disease.
It's not fair because I work hard for some benefits, and I used to be a truck driver.
Yet he still can't afford lunch. And experts say the needy are needier than ever.
Are they more poor? Yes, that I can say.
And here on the ground, far from Washington and Wall Street, there is no sign of an economic recovery for these people in sight.
I don't see recovery. No.
They have no thanks for their politicians.
I don't know what's going on with the government. I don't know what's the president doing. For me, he's not doing better. He's not doing better. He's doing bad.
In the urban decay of Silk City, gratitude is reserved for the help with recovery they do know.
Thank you very much for everything. Hey, Steven. Thank you, sir. You're very kind.
Lauren Lyster, RT, Patterson, New Jersey.
We're starting to hear terms like the poorest of the poor. That's those people who live at 50% or below the official poverty level. Nearly 7%, or 20.5 million Americans, are actually in that situation today. So how has the United States reached this point? And what will it take to turn things around? So when will today's president declare war on poverty? And not just declare it, but send in reinforcements? And when will the American people join him? To help me answer all those questions and more, I'm joined by Michael Snyder, the founder of the economiccollapseblog.com. He joins us from Washington State. Hey there, Michael. Let's begin with this. The US Census data is out. How has President Obama responded to this new information about poverty?
Well, the Obama administration seems to think that if the stock market is surging, that everything is okay. But the truth is that the poorest of the poor, they keep increasing. While Barack Obama is saying the economy is improving, as you noted, there are now 6.7% of all Americans are living in extreme poverty. That is the highest level ever recorded. And then you just look at the regular poverty numbers. Last year, 2.6 million more Americans slipped under the poverty line. That was the most Americans to fall into poverty ever. And then if you look back, and this is part of a long-term trend. Back in the year 2000, we had 1 out of every 9 Americans living in poverty. Today, we have 1 out of every 7 Americans living in poverty.
And Michael, I know you wrote about this recently, including a part that you wrote, 19 facts about poverty that will absolutely astound you. And I wanted to put up just a few of those. These are some statistics from last year. According to US Census data, the percentage of very poor went up in 300 out of 360 of the largest metropolitan areas. And the poverty rate of children increased by 22%, with 1 of 4 children on food stamps. Also, you wrote that the number of Americans on food stamps in general has increased 74% since 2007. Also, something that important, we talk about children, we also should talk about the elderly. 1 out of 6 elderly Americans now lives below the federal poverty line. I'm wondering, do you think the majority of Americans understand how dire this situation is?
I think we're so isolated today. We all have our own jobs. We all get in our cars and live our own little lives and drive to the office. And sometimes we don't realize how many people out there are really suffering. But when you take a look at the bigger picture, people really are hurting. When you've got 22% of all children in the United States living in poverty, that's twice the level that we see in countries like France or the UK. So that's very disturbing. Or you've got the number of Americans on food stamps. It increases every single month. Every single month almost we set a brand new record. Today it's almost 46 million Americans that are on food stamps. And as you noted, that's increased by 74% since back in 2007. So poverty is exploding, but Americans have become so insulated. They might live in a wealthy community. They might live where they're not exposed to this. But it's expanding. All the numbers show it.
I want to talk about the report that we just showed. So the poverty line in America is set at $10,890 for a single person and $22,350 for a family of 4. Do you think that those numbers are set a little too low? That seems to be what a lot of people that Kaylin spoke to for this report. They said, we make more than that, but we still can't survive.
Oh, absolutely, I agree. And you can see this across the nation. For example, the number of Americans going to food banks and places where they can get food has increased by more than 40% since this most recent economic downturn. So it's true, we've got this whole class of Americans today that are the working poor. They go, they work their part-time jobs, they flip burgers, they work at Walmart, but it's not enough to feed a family. But they may make enough where they don't only the case. But even if you look at the numbers that the government does give us, it clearly shows that poverty is definitely on the rise. I mean, when you've got 1 out of every 6 elderly Americans that living in poverty, a lot of them get Social Security and things like that, but they still can't make it. In this winter, many elderly Americans are going to have to choose between heating their homes, putting food on the table, or getting their medicine. Those are real tough choices to make.
I think that's a really important point. We always talk here at RT about, that 9% unemployment number that we keep seeing, how that's much lower than it actually should be. But the fact is, a lot of these numbers that we're seeing, the bottom line is it's showing a trend. And that trend is that a whole lot more people are struggling, and they're struggling in even more dire ways than they were before. I'm wondering what you think, Michael. I mean, what's the point of even having poverty levels?
Well, we definitely want to identify and help those that are in need. And we definitely want to give them assistance and food stamps and so on. But those are only temporary solutions. What they really need are jobs. But the jobs are leaving this country by the millions. Big corporations are shipping our jobs out to areas where they pay, areas of the world where they pay much fewer wages. And the good manufacturing jobs are being replaced by service jobs, which pay a lot less. And people are having a hard time supporting their families on these jobs while the price of food keeps rising, the price of putting gasoline in your car keeps rising. So American families are feeling more squeezed than ever. The median income has decreased the last couple of years while we've seen inflation rise, especially on essentials. So people are feeling more squeezed than ever, and a lot more American families are being pushed into poverty by no fault of their own.
Certainly some really interesting points raised about the problems. A lot of the leaders in our country are starting to identify the very same problems. What we still seem to be missing is some solutions. A really good point about those jobs going overseas. Seems like perhaps the next year, the 2012 campaign will bring up some new ideas that haven't been thought of. But right now, that's something that definitely needs to happen. Founder of the economiccollapseblog.com, that's Michael T. Snyder.
Recently, there was a study by economist David Autor of MIT that states that our middle class is obsolete and being replaced by automation.
Quite simply, mechanization is more productive, efficient, and sustainable than human labor in virtually every sector of the economy today. Machines do not need vacations, breaks, insurance, pensions, and they can work 24 hours a day every day. The output potential and accuracy compared to human labor is unmatched. The bottom line, repetitive human labor is becoming obsolete and impractical across the world, and the unemployment you see around you today is fundamentally the result of this evolution of efficiency in technology. For years, market economists have dismissed this growing pattern, which could be called technological unemployment, because of the fact that new sectors always seem to emerge to reabsorb the displaced workers. Today, the service sector is the only real hub left and currently employs over 80% of the American workforce, with most industrialized countries maintaining a similar proportion. However, this sector is now being challenged increasingly by automated kiosks, automated restaurants, and even automated stores. Economists today are finally acknowledging what they have been denying for years. Not only is technological unemployment exasperating the current labor crisis we see across the world due to the global economic downturn, but the more the recession deepens, the faster the industries are mechanizing. The catch, which is not realized, is that the faster they mechanize to save money, the more they displace people, the more they reduce public purchasing power. This means that while the corporation can produce everything more cheaply, fewer and fewer people will actually have money to buy anything, regardless of how cheap they become. The bottom line is that the labor for income game is slowly coming to an end. In fact, if you take a moment to reflect on the jobs which are in existence today, which automation could take over right now if applied, 75% of the global workforce could be replaced by mechanization tomorrow.
Yeah.